Hello. Hey guys, can you hear me? Can you see? Can you see the screen? I don't know how much of a delay there is today, but I think we're ready to get started. Hey Brecky, Etienne, Adam, Jaime, Winston, Simon, John, and Mike. Who else is here? Perfect. Great. Not too bad. Not too bad. The lag that we have today. Perfect. Alrighty. So, as I said in the post that I put in the community, I have three announcements. One of them is kind of like just a cool thing. The other two are pretty cool as well, but a bit bigger than on the first one. So I just want to make sure that we have enough people here to tell you about it before I say anything. Well, I guess I can repeat myself and um, I'll just tell you guys. Just one second. I'm just finishing up here what I had prepared. Cool. John, you shaved. I did. I did. I did. It was getting out of control. It was being too scruffy. So now I look like a 10-year-old boy. That's what my girlfriend says. Alrighty. So the first thing, well, let me actually tell you what we're gonna do today first, and then we move on to the announcements. So for today, we're gonna do a live feedback session. And oh, hey Eric. And the idea is just to give you some insight into some of the work that you guys have been doing. I have the Egmont, or I think that's the name, Egmont. That Let me just show you in the community. In fact, that'll be easier. So what I want to do is again provide some feedback in general terms of some of the projects that you guys have been working, and just give you some ideas, some extra techniques that you can use to complement whatever is already on the course, and maybe just to make your life easier, because sometimes depending on what you're creating, it could be very specific. So that's kind of like the idea with this stream. So where is he? Here we go. So Alexander shared this guy, right? This little Egmont, I think it's Egmont the name. So the illustration is fantastic, and he just sort of like departed a little bit from this more abstract form, I guess, into a more figurative form. But still, I'm gonna give him, and by default everyone else, some pointers on how to approach the blocking, and some other things that I think is very important, that are very important at this early stage. So there you go. That's the one that we're going to be working on. That also for John, John Derico. So John is working on this creature, and he said he's having some blocks around how to solve the jaw. So I've prepared something. I mock up something this morning to maybe give you an idea, and also I think this one is going to be important for everyone else to see how to approach something like this from a workflow standpoint of view, how to start sculpting it, what's the best pose, how to then think about retopology and that sort of thing. So that's going to be also part of this stream. Just going to leave that one here. And other than that, I think we can move on into the announcements. Let's see. So the first thing is, I noticed some of you guys have been working on, or want to work on some clothes for the character, which is great. Unfortunately, the character that I use for the course, because I was focusing more on the workflows, doesn't have any clothes, as in, drapery or a cape or anything like that. So instead, what I'm going to do is, you might have already seen it, you might have already got it, but I'm going to give you free access to my clothes and drapery course. And that's it. That's the announcement. So that's one of the announcements gone. Basically, you can. I'm gonna share a code similar to what I did with the brushes for the fiber mesh. You will be able to access with a unique code the entire course of the clothes and drapery. So the reason I'm doing this is because this is kind of like complementary material or complementary information to what you're already doing in the course. And this is just it's a fast-paced short course. This is very short. I don't want to detract too much attention from the actual the extra mile course, but this one is, again, if you're working with clothes, it might be something, easier, and why not? I mean, this is the this is the idea. So this is a course dedicated to full drapery. So I walk you through the entire. Again, you might have already seen it and you might already have it, but maybe not everyone. And that's kind of like the benefit of being part of the extra mile. So I show you a bunch of different techniques for clothes and drapery and tearing apart clothes and that sort of thing. So again, it's just a complement to the course as a extra information. So there you go. I will be sorting this out by the end of this week, giving you guys the access to this. I'm not gonna put it in the extra mile course because I don't wanna overcharge and make not overcharge over basically add too many videos and too many information into the actual course, because this is just something that you might find interesting and find useful at certain point, but is not essential for the course. That's what I meant. So cool, that's one thing gone. The other thing is the student challenge is almost ready. So we have the proper course. We have the proper course. We have a day dedicated to anatomy, right? One day dedicated to anatomy, or at least a few hours a day. Then we have the Sculptember that I encourage everyone to do, which is kind of like cool, a few minutes of the day. And then the fourth thing is going to be the student challenge. So on top of everything, add everything else that you do in your daily life, work and everything. So it's going to be a lot. I don't want to overwhelm you, but I do want to encourage you to to pretty much push yourself to handle many projects at the same time, and that's kind of like the real world, right? So for the student challenge, right? That's not it. I have set up a series of skulls. They're almost ready. So I have this one, which is it's not necessarily humanoid, but it's the closest one to a human type of character. Obviously, well more exaggerated. So that's one. Then we have this one, which is more alien-like with some weird-looking shaped eyes. So this one could be interesting for a character that has massive eyes. So this is another one, and this is another one. I personally really like this one just because it's different. So this is kind of like I don't know exactly what it could be. That's the whole challenge, right? You can figure out what this skull belongs to, right? So the idea with the challenge again, and I will explain more about it. I did mention it briefly last week, but the idea is that you can choose one of these skulls. You can do more if you want, but the challenge is going to be about one. You choose one of these three, and you need to come up with the skin and the flesh on top of this character. So that is ultimately the idea with the challenge. Now, that's not the announcement. That's something that I told you yesterday. Oh, not yesterday, last week. But the announcement is that I managed to get our first guest as a judge, and he is. I'm not gonna be judging the student challenge, by the way. I'm gonna be helping you try to make the best out of this challenge, so that you get the best out of the challenge, really. But you probably know of him. He's a great character artist. He's gonna come as our judge for the first student challenge. So this is Corp Abstain, and I'm sure you're familiar with him. Maybe this one is a pretty well known in 10 Cloverfield Lane. The movie, he designed this creature. So he's all around an incredible artist. He's really cool guy, and he is going to be judging your work. So he's gonna pick a winner basically for the student challenge. Um, and and that's it. That's the announcement. I will let you know once I have everything ready, and once you decide to participate, then I will take all the final submissions and I'm gonna send it to Kurt, and he is going to choose the winner. So again, he's a super cool guy. That's the second announcement, which I think is pretty cool. Should get you guys excited. And the third one is also pretty cool. um, I have invited a friend of mine called his name is Adam McHenry. He's an animator. So he's doing. I'm gonna show you some of his stuff. So this is just a block out and an animation that he did. This is a practice stuff for his website and his tutorials, and he's also a teacher. But he's 100% focused on animation. So he doesn't concern about anything else but animation, which is awesome. So I do work with him every now and again to produce like little things. I send him some of my work, and he just animates it and that sort of thing. So he's fantastic. He's a fantastic animator. And the reason I want to bring him into the course as a special guest is because he is someone that could just take whatever you have done as a prototype and get it rigging really quickly, just to do a quick animation or a prototype or even a pose. So I have recorded the first video, and that will be available for you guys probably next week as soon as I finish a quick editing that I'm doing. And that's just again, it's Adam as a guest, and he's gonna be showing you how to take a little really rough character that I put together in like a few minutes in the video, and he's gonna take that into Maya LT, which by the way is free for you guys that are students. So for non-commercial work, you can just download Maya LT or Lite, I think it's Lite or LT, and he uses that to very quickly show you very easy how to set up a quick rig of whatever character you're having, and you will be able to animate it if you want to, or simply rigging it, simply posing that rig. So it's super handy. That's part one done, and we're gonna have a second part where he show you how to animate and how to transfer weights once you get something a little bit better. Anyway, that's super exciting as well, and just to show you some of the things that I've been working on towards for you guys. So that's in terms of announcements. That's done. So let me just double check. Yeah, so Corp Abstain coming as a judge for the student challenge, Adam McHenry for the next the first kind of like invited or guest in the extra mile, and the third thing was the closed course. So all good. All right, so we're ready to start. About 15 minutes of me just chatting about. So I'm gonna start with John stuff just so that we get it out of the way first, because that one is probably a bit faster than what I want to show you with the other guy, with the other character. Alright, so I did this mockup very quickly in the morning, very sketchy, doesn't have eyes or anything. It's just to show you the way that I reckon you can approach something like this, like John is trying to do with the mouse. So imagine like a Demagogon type of thing, right? So this is the version of the character with the mouth closed, or the jaws. It has 4 parts. The mouth has 4 parts. Hopefully you can see them here. This is all part of the same mesh. And then here we have the guy with the mouth open. Right, so open, close, open, close, open, close. Right? Now, the idea... Let me. So, if you, by the way, if you have questions, obviously, let me check. Yeah, Kurt is amazing. Gotta impress Kurt. September is gonna be crazy. It's going to be really crazy. I mean, if you take on board all the challenges, just go for it. Awesome. Adam, one would say, yeah, I see what you did there, Adam. You would say that I would go the extra mile. Alright, so again, the idea is just basically showing you how to solve these, my opinion on my version of how to solve these type of things. Now, I think the main, I would say not the issue, but the main constraint that John is having at the moment with his version of the character um, is the fact that the jaws are moving rather than rotating at the moment. So I think that's what causing obviously these polygons to break. Although I'm assuming they're different subtools, they're not rotating, they are moving, and that could present a huge issue if you want to make sure that everything feels kind of like part of the same. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is when you open the mouth, you would expect a lot of things to stretch. So if you think about like the jaws of a snake, for example, the jaw is not connected, or it's connected but it's not solid bone, right? Because they have to dismount the jaw in order to a constrictor to eat like a huge prey, right? Or like a big anaconda will eat an I don't know, a buffalo, whatever it is, and it will have to on mount or stretch the mouth too big. So my point is that if you were going to do something like that, similar to what's if you take like the snake as a reference, there are certain parts that are or certain bones and muscles that are gonna stretch and move when the character opens the mouth. So in this case, I feel like you are only moving the jaws at this point, but there's no deformation on the character. And I know this is still a blocking stage, but it would be ideal to understand how this is going to work so that you can apply it later on when you have it open. So in that regard, if you look at I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hide the jaws or the mouth of this guy, and you'll see the same thing for this guy. The idea here is that all of these areas of the at the back of the head, and all of this stretching and pulling, if it is something that the character does constantly, right, is gonna generate some memory some memory folds and some wrinkles in the actual skin that are gonna be permanently there, because it's a motion that happens quite often, right? So that's why I added this bunch of wrinkles here. But when he opens the mouth, right, there are a few parts of the actual head that need to stretch and to move to allow room for these parts of this jaw to be strong enough and also to open. Because if you don't do that, what you end up having is just a very separated set of pieces to they won't feel part of it won't feel believable, right? So I think that's the main thing, and honestly, that's the main thing that you could do to make it feel right. That the actual head or the muscles and parts of the head are actually moving and distorting, right? So let's bring that back, right? So let me just show you from behind what I was thinking. So you can take this, and it's pushing quite a bit. Right? And that's kind of like my suggestion with this type of characters, right? If you want to do something like that, although these are separate polygroups, I started with different subtools. You can merge them together and see how they work as individual parts, and because you have polygroups, you can easily just hide them and work on this area, then invert the selection and work on this area. So these are just tips more in terms of how to approach the sculpting of this guy. So I would advise that you work on the character with the mouth open, right? So you can block it out as I have here, but if this is something that you would want to showcase, I reckon that this is the best way to go about it. The reason why is because you have it's almost like the same way as working with a T-pose, right? So if this is a single subtool, let's say I'm gonna merge this into a Dynamesh. Let's duplicate that. Did it do it? All right, cool. So let me just double check. Yeah. So this is a single subtool now, right? Everything is merged together. Let's smooth this out a bit, these transitions here, and refine them a bit more here. Right. So again, this is kind of like working on a T-pose for the head. I would probably even make it a little bit more subtle, so like halfway in between, so not totally open, but you know, with enough space that you can easily go ahead and say, you know what, I'm going to work on this area now, so I can isolate it and work on this area, or even in, you know, around here. So I'll make sure that it's open and it gives you enough freedom to um, detail it. So now this is a single subtool. I'm going to show you what I would do after once you go through the process of retopologizing it and all that. So I'm going to do a quick zero measure. So basically just following the quick steps of the retopology, or the automatic retopology part of the course. So once you have a cleaner topology and you project all the details, by the way, if you have the mouth open in this case like this, projecting details is going to be way easier than if you have everything closed, because you might get like a lot of artifacts if you have overlapping pieces of geometry or pieces of geometry that are too close, which if you have the mouth closed would be the case, right? I want it to be one subtool, cool, but I separated them to make it easier for me to create a layer. Then can toggle. Yep, that's cool. I'm being scared. That's fair enough. So let's have a look. So this is already retopologized. I'm gonna do another one because this is very. I forgot to change the amount of polygons. Let's see how we go. Once you have your subdivision level, once you have retopologized your character, once you have projected the details, and you have everything ready to go, what you can do is create, like Adam suggested, created a layer and close it, which is what I'm going to show you. And then you can continue working on details of how the head would look like if it is closed. So when you get to the, I don't think you have gone to that module yet, but when you get to posing the character, I show you some techniques and some tricks where you can maintain your T-pose, which in this case that would be the T-pose of the head, and then use layers to keep sculpting it with a pose. So you basically maintain your entire pose or T-pose with symmetry in a single layer, and then you use additional layers to control, you know, extra details or the pose itself. Just gonna do a one more time. I'm just gonna make it really pretty low poly so that it's easier. Okay, so this is already my retopology. Not the best one, but you know, it's pretty decent for what it is. So now we can go ahead and divide this a few times. Again, in the course you'll have a better explanation of how to do that and how to project properly, because you know, I like to project every single step or every single subdivision, but for this purpose I'm just gonna do it as it is. It's not gonna be too bad, but it's better to do it one subdivision at a time. So I'm going to project all, and we have about 1 million polygons. There we go. So this is, you see, this is what I mean about all these artifacts. All right, I'm going to do it properly. All these artifacts come from the projection, right? So it's better to have project one level of subdivision at a time. So you can project one and see what's happening if there is some errors, and then you can increase the size. The thing is that because I subdivided it too much, I just changed the, let me go back, I changed the size too much. So instead of like changing the cage or projection, I'm just gonna push this a bit more, especially in the areas that could be problematic. You might not encounter this problem ever, but I did it too low poly. I went too far. So it's just a matter of readjusting the main shapes just to match the high res a little bit better. You can do this manually, or you can increase, by the way, you can increase the distance of the scan projection, and that should fix it as well. I think it's just a little bit easier to do it like that. So let's do project all and check. So there's still some problems here, right? Undo that. So I'm going to increase the distance a little bit and see what that does, and you'll see that fix that problem there. So if you get this type of artifacts, you can do it manually, or you can do the project all. All right, let's go to the next subdivision level. Project all, next one, project all, next one, project all, and the last one is going to take a little bit longer. Project all. Cool. So now we have a pretty decent. There's still some artifacts here, but we're just gonna avoid that for the time being. So we have a pretty decent grid topology of our guy. I don't know what happened there. All right, I'm just gonna avoid this, ignore this. That's probably because of the grid topology. There's some triangles in here. Yeah. Again, it's not. This is not the best of grid topology, so don't worry too much about it. So let's say that you're happy with this. What you do is you go back to the lowest subdivision level, right? We go to the layers and we create a new layer. Whoops, sorry. You have to be in the highest subdivision level. Create a new layer. And now you can come back to the lowest subdivision level. You won't be able to see it, or it's going to be grayed out like it is here, but you will be able to still record, right? So now with that layer recording, we can use masking tools, right? And bring in the gizmo, and we can hold Alt to reposition the gizmo. And this is one of the most important things. Instead of using translation or translating, transforming like in the X, Y, Z axis like this, I would only be doing rotation. And once you do the rotation, then you can start pushing things. But just make sure that the rotation is very important, because that's kind of like the pivot of stuff, right? Just gonna do this very quickly so that we don't waste too much time on this. Oops. Remember that holding Alt, you can reposition the pivot and also reset the rotation of the pivot. So you can hold Alt and rotate it, so that is all part of the same, all pointing in the right direction that you want. And let's just do this one quickly. Alright, I destroy things quite a bit, but you know, once we remove the masking, we can go ahead and fix these things. And like I said in the course, every time that you do something like this and you do posing or anything related to posing, things are going to break, and you cannot be afraid of breaking things, because it's gonna happen, and it's part of the process. So you can do things to you know, avoid fixing too many things, but ultimately that's what's gonna happen. It's gonna break, and you're gonna have to fix it. All right, let's say something like that. Again, it's not the greatest thing, but we have an idea of how things might work, right? And we have everything within a layer. So now I can go to the highest subdivision level, right? We have everything. We can, again, we're still recording, so we can still tweak these things. And here's where we can say, all right, because when the mouth is closed, we can soften a little bit of this They're not gonna be, you know, making any effort at the moment. They're just relaxed. This is again part of the sculpting process. But let's say you have something like this, and you can go ahead and keep refining it. Now, if we go to the layer, we have the close. We can rename this as let's call it close, right? And we can just use this to go to 0 to 1. So you have this nice animation. It's a linear animation, so it looks good from the front, but if you look at it from the top, it's just like, you know. But that's the idea. So you have this single layer, right? You have this single layer, but you can work now in both states once you pass this process of the retopology, right? But to get to this stage, I would recommend if any of you guys are doing something similar, or if you can identify this workflow with something else, it doesn't have to be the mouth. Just try to keep it kind of like in a relaxed pose, so that then you can close it and open it like this, right? And then you can have it as it is, and then create a new layer, and this is going to be a sculpting layer, right, to refine whatever these details is. And this could be a layer to further improve the motion or the wrinkles that are formed after you move it. Let's say something like that. I don't know. Now I'm just making things up, but let's say I want to refine these, maybe add some details here, right? All of this is happening in a single layer, right, that I can move like that. And then if I go back to the first layer, because I work on a hierarchy, you could turn these details back on and off. Okay, so it's not very obvious because of the other layer, but it has all the details in there. Let's just change that. Oops. All right, so that's a little bit more obvious if we push it forward. So again, I would recommend you name your layers, because once you have a few of these, it'll be a little bit hard to know which ones you need to keep on and which ones you need to keep off to be able to see both effects. So in this case, it's easier because both at 1, that's what I want to do to make sure that I have the details on the closed face. Both at 0 means that this is the head when it's open. Alright, so hopefully that sort of gives you guys ideas of how to tackle this type of project. Let me just check the chat because I haven't done that yet. If you have questions about that. You can totally work on separate subtools, and that's how I originally set this up. Obviously, just I'll show you. So I have a folder here where I have 3 different subtools. So I have 2 with these ones and 3 with these ones, right? So they're different subtools, and that's how you have set it up. All I did is once I have the blocking and the pose of the mouth open and ready to go, then I combine everything into this one, right? So you still see they're all part of the same. I combine everything, but I didn't dynamesh it. So this is the one before dynameshing. So you can keep working on this as separate, but within the same subtool, and then with hold Control and Shift, you can select the parts like I mentioned at the beginning, and then keep working on those, right? So that's one way to approach it. And then if you want, you can just dynamesh like I did here and refine, all the details to the projection and working on the retopology. Just be careful in certain areas here. Like usually happens in the center of the geometry that sometimes it creates kind of like a triangle, but this would have been an easy fix if we spend more time and we spotted it during the retopology. All right, cool. Cool. So then close it. Cool. I need to make sure I don't need to retopologize anymore, otherwise gotta get rid of the layer. Yeah, I mean, you can get rid of the layer and do another retopology. Don't be afraid of that. You have to do it again. It's not a setback. It's always an improvement. It's not that you go to a point, it's like, oh, now I have to do this again. It becomes part of the process very organically, but you know, don't be afraid of doing that. Cool. All right, guys. So moving on, let's talk about more about the blocking stage, which is absolutely crucial. And I think some of you guys are, are doing great jobs in the way that you're presenting the blockout and setting up stuff. But I think in some cases you are going a little bit too far into details, and we need to step it back a bit and make sure that the primary shapes in a very low poly topology or very low poly mesh is a solid piece before we move on. And that's we have here. We have the Egmont, or I forgot the name. I'm just calling it Egmont at the moment. Egmont. Right. So the first thing that I can see with this guy is the primary shapes are. You have an understanding, you have an idea of what this is, but the primary shapes are blocked in a kind of like an uncomfortable way, right? And this is the first thing, or the first step that I would say to Alexander, and for you guys that are doing this blockout, is to make sure that you block everything at a low resolution, so that you have more ability and more freedom to manipulate the bigger forms before you get into details. So if you get closer to the head, this is way too much details for this stage, for the blocking stage. It has too many wrinkles, it's too detailed, and what happens is that you try to do a little fix and push things to make it look better, and because you don't have you have too many polygons, you end up creating this blobbiness, which is very hard to control, right? And that's one of the issues that you see sometimes in characters and sculpts online, that they look super detailed, and they're using like surface noises and alphas, and you have like really small wrinkles, but it doesn't look good, it doesn't look realistic, because the main primary forms and the secondary forms are not well defined. So adding details, like I said during the course, adding details in ZBrush is so easy. It's just like click and drag, and you have a VDM or an alpha, and you have a lot of details, and they look awesome. But it would only work if you're only doing close-ups, right? If you want to read the composition as a gestalt, like as a whole, it's important to make sure that the primary shapes are set. So with that in mind, what I would do with this character is rethink about the shapes with a much lower resolution. So I think the horns are fine, but for example, let's go with the hoodie. I'm gonna give it a single polygroup. I would reduce this in Dynamesh quite a bit. So I'm gonna move this to, let's say, I'm not entirely sure of the scale of this model. That's alright. So it should be okay. Maybe let's go for 56. Okay. So very low poly, but this is much more easier to work with and to refine the shape, like I said, than having lots of polygons. I would do so this is a process that I would go ahead and do over the entire set of subtools. So again, with this one, I would Dynamesh it with a much lower resolution. That's better. The legs, I'm just going to delete this one and just use that one as a reference. Again, 1000 polygons for Dynamesh is way too much. Okay, this one as well. We could go even lower than this, but I'm gonna keep it simple. The hand, I think the hand is fine, just because it is already a retopologized one. But I don't know if we can actually reconstruct. Yep. So I will reconstruct some subdivision level just by clicking on this reconstruct subdivide, and ZBrush is gonna attempt to. I think that's the lowest you can go. It's gonna attempt to take that high resolution mesh into a lower subdivision mesh based on the topology. So because this one was a clean topology, you can reconstruct to a certain point, so you have two subdivision level. I'm going to delete higher. Again, we don't need it at this point. And the mustache, which I think is pretty cool idea with these solid sort of pieces. I think they're fine. I'm just going to go into the right one of the character, or left one for you guys, and go to the lowest subdivision level and delete higher. And I'm just going to delete the second one. So all I'm doing here is simplifying this character and simplifying the blocking so that I can work faster and show you the approach. So let's go ahead and do mirrored and well. Let's see if they're not. They're sort of like going intersecting in the middle. So before I mirror and well, I'm just going to push this back a bit, so that when I do mirror and well, they're not connected and I can still work on them separately. Alright, so I have everything almost done. I'm going to take the hand. I'm also going to do mirror and weld so I can see it on both sides. Same with the leg, mirror and weld. And just in case, I'm gonna do mirror and weld for the pants and for the hoodie. Just because when you do Dynamesh, and if you don't have, sometimes Dynamesh can generate asymmetry, obviously, because it's trying to adapt to the volumes. So that's just a quick tip. Like once you use Dynamesh, if you have symmetrical option, just mirror and weld it. Now the main issue here is with the head, right? Let's see how the head shapes up. This is again way too much geometry for a block out, even at subdivision 2. So I'm just gonna delete higher, right? And I'm going to refine this by changing the topology to something lower. Now the head could be slightly higher than the rest of the subtools so that you get more shapes, or more details. But at this point, I think this looks fine. And I'm going to try to maintain the idea of the, it feels almost like an Inuit, the face, but you know, we'll see. The eyes doesn't really matter because the eyes are generally, you can have a high resolution eye from the beginning because you're not really sculpting it, so you don't have to manipulate it too much. So starting with the head, what I'll do is smooth things out a bit. I'm going to do it with activating symmetry. So I'm going to smooth things quite a bit. All right. Let's say something like that, very, very smooth, or you know, I basically have overridden all the details, all of the wrinkles that Alexander had put in here. Okay, but the point is that you need to start with something that looks very, very clean at the beginning as a very simplified geometry. So now that I have this, even more, I can go ahead and start blocking shapes in. Right, so you can do that by just using the move tool with AccuCurve enable. So you can start pushing things in and out. Let's say for the nose, working on the nose bridge a bit more, pushing the zygomatic arc here so that it feels like it has. I don't know how realistic Alexander wants to do this character, but you know, it's always good to keep things grounded to reality. Alright, so this is one method, and of course this is part of what it's already in the course. The other thing that you can do, by the way, I absolutely love the big eyes of the reference, and for some of you guys, I don't know if you didn't see the reference at the beginning. It's in the community. Here we go. This one is the reference, and I really like the big eyes, right? So I don't know how much Alexander wants to depart from this concept. I would personally go for something like this. It's more my style, or more what I like to do. This kind of like quirky, weird looking stuff. but you know, that's completely up to him. Right, so what I'll do in this case is maybe instead of using the move brush, I can use insert meshes to block out everything. Right, so if you want to do, for example, the nose, let's go ahead and bring in the IMM primitive, and we can select something like polysphere, right? And we can play around with the depth of this brush. So how much is is embedded into the surface, and that for you guys should be on the brush palette depth, this one here. So right now I have this middle point, the black little dot, right in the middle. That means that it's gonna be embedded almost halfway. So if I push it in, you'll see it's almost half of the sphere pushed into the geometry. If I push this forward even more, it's gonna be, you know, more embedded, and so on and so forth. So what I want to do with this is create the nostrils of the nose. So just click and drag, and then because every time that you drag an insert mesh, you're gonna have automatic masking. We can then go ahead and bring in the move brush and then refine this a bit more, right? And keep in mind that this whatever thing you insert, it doesn't have to be you don't have to work only on the inserted piece, like in the nostrils. You can invert the mask and then push this thing backward a bit more, and then you have a better idea of that with this piece of the face is sitting on top, basically. Right. Then we can go ahead and simply control click and drag, and because we're using Dynamesh, we're gonna have this ready to keep detailing, not detailing, blocking. Okay, so don't worry too much about the amount of geometry we have. We're not trying to do any details at this point. But the blockout of the nose feels a little bit better now, just because we spend the time on the primary shapes, right? Now for something like this part of the head, and try to solve the two eyes, as I mentioned, I would prefer, like I personally would go with the larger eyes. So I'm just gonna show you that in this case, but it's the same process. It's all about the blocking. So I'm just gonna make this part of the eyes really big, where the eyes would be, and that's using the clay brush, and then once here for the top, right? All right. Now the next part of this blocking would be to create kind of like the eyebrow region as well, and that could be done similar to how I did the lips of my character in the course. So we can bring in the curve tube, and also we can push it in a bit more, and we can do something like this, right? So now we have this clay brush that we can use, you know, sorry, not the clay brush, the tubes in there, and then we can use the move brush, similar to what I did with the nostrils. But this allows me to concentrate only on these areas and the volume of these areas. So it's super important to get these things right before we do any kind of details. So that's good. Let's go ahead and merge everything together and smooth things out. So that is, I feel it's a better blocking for this character. Now let's do the same thing for the top, using the same technique with a smaller brush. Maybe smaller than that. All right. Now with the move brush, let's tweak the volumes, the primary shapes, and these are still primary shapes, right? We're not getting into the secondary ones. I'm going to invert that and push this in here as well, and then merge everything together and smooth everything out. Okay, so these are basically just refinements and showing you some ideas for blocking the shape of the character, the primary shapes. I'm going to bring in the down standard brush and just define the mouth a little bit more, but that's all. I'm not going to get into details or creating details. And then what we can do is use the clay builder brush or the clay brush and just work on refining the volumes. We can also get out of solo mode and so that we can see the eyes. I'm just gonna hide the ones that I don't need. Alright, so this one is the left one. Just gonna make it a bit bigger. And this one as well, I'm gonna make it bigger. Exaggerate it a bit more. Right? And now that I have that reference, we can go ahead and mirror and weld that. And mirror and weld that one. And we have this as reference. We can go ahead and use the move brush to refine again, keep refining the primary shapes of the head using the spheres as reference for the eyes or for the placement of the eyes. But it's all about the blocking and getting these shapes right before you move on. In fact, I reckon I can push just in terms of proportions, I can take these guys and push them down a bit more. But once I have this set of eyes like this, we can go ahead and use the same technique that we used before using the curved tube brush with a smaller brush size, right? And then do this type of things. We'll probably need to, let's see, just using the brushes, the curve brush, the same way that I did it in the course for the lips of my character to create the eyelids of this guy, right? And then using the move brush to fine tune it, get an idea of where the lacrimal might be. Right, invert that selection. I'm just gonna push things here. Combine this with Dynamesh. Oops, combine with Dynamesh. Smooth that out and bring in the tubes again. And let's go ahead and bring in the move brush. So all of this is going to be the same. So I'm not going to block out obviously everything, but I think these are enough techniques to, you know, complement what's already in the course and to give you ideas of how to maintain the low resolution while you're blocking the main shapes. I've said blocking way too many times this stream, but it is essential. Just gonna add a bit more volume here with this kind of upper eyelid masked, right? And then combine everything and then smooth out. So you'll see the block out might take a little while, just because again it's important to make sure everything feels right. But once you have the block and the primary shapes ready and they're working and the silhouette is working, it's much easier to continue adding details. Alright, I'm not gonna do the top area, the top part. Hopefully this also gives you an idea. Right? The other important thing just to maintain kind of like the concept here is the fact that he doesn't have shoulders, which I think is pretty cool and make it look more like a neck. And you can achieve that with just tweaking a little bit of the hoodie. Now, I'm sure you've done this, or you've experienced it in the past, or you have kids. Basically, when you're putting like a hoodie or a jumper that has like a very small or narrow neck, when you put it on, they just get stuck at the top of the head, and then it creates that really nice tension from the top of the head to the shoulders. It looks funny, but I reckon that's one way to go about this character. So I'm just gonna suggest that in terms of the block out using the move brush. Right, so I'm gonna take this hoodie and I'm just gonna push that out like this to refine kind of like the shape of what I envision this character to look like. And again, this is Alexander's design, so I don't wanna break it too much or influence too much with my personal, ideas for the design. But I reckon the original shape was pretty decent, pretty cool illustration. So you can still make it look more humanoid, I guess, but adding a bit more of this stretching of the what it could be the fabric is definitely gonna help with the overall shape and make it look more interesting and less generic as well. Alright, something like that. And again, still at these very early stages of the process of blocking this character, you can suggest a few of the main wrinkles, of the main folds that you add to this character. Maybe this one also needs to be a bit pushed out. So you can take, for example, the damp standard brush and go, all right, this guy is clearly and this is something that you can have a look in the mini course that I'm going to share with you, the clothes and drapery course about tension points. So right now the head is one of the tension points, and obviously the arms are pulling this. So from these two tension points, these are going to be straight lines. Right, and that's how you can block these type of wrinkles very quickly, just knowing where the tension points are. So the shoulders here for this character, where the kind of like where the arms are breaking away from the body, right? And this is just the damp standard brush using the inverted effect, just with Alt, nothing else. But the geometry is pretty limited, and that's how easy it is to block out these type of things when you're using a low resolution mesh. Of course, if you want to detail things a little bit more, once you have this level of, of the primary shapes ready, so like the entire, maybe the hoodie is too much like that. This entire block out and the silhouette is working. You can also, I have this set up already here, but you can do the same thing by changing the color of the background and changing the material. So I can just go for a black color here and black color there and a white color for the background, and that's how you can quickly judge the silhouette of the character. So I think the top part is working a little bit better, but it sort of falls down in the way that it connects with the bottom just by looking at the silhouette. The side view is alright, but the front one is not. I mean, the bottom part is not ideal. So I'm gonna be wrapping up here, guys, because I gotta go and do some errands. But I'm gonna show you this quickly. So again, because of the silhouette, I will just push this a bit more. And again, these are just some personal preferences, not necessarily part of Alexander's design, but if he likes them, he's welcome to steal them. Well, it's his design, I'm not stealing anything. All right, now with the bottom part, I will try to do the same thing. Just try to maintain that egg or roundish shape all around, and the eggs look sorry the legs of the egg look a little bit bent. So I would just rotate that a little bit. And I will make sure that they feel that they're not, like the guy is not squatting or just bending the knees. Again, very smooth, so that I can block in the shapes a bit better. So I guess my main advice the and the topic or theme that kind of like permeated the entire live stream today is blocking and making sure that the primary shapes and the silhouette and the bigger shapes are working before you move into any kind of details or any kind of secondary forms. That's why the blocking stage is so important. Whether you do it with primitives like I show in the course, whether you do it with C-spheres, whether you do it with just Sculptris Pro and Dynamesh, it's very very important that you maintain very low poly so that you're not constrained basically. Because if I have this in a high resolution and you have like a, let's say you have this in a high res and you have this wrinkle that you really like, it's gonna be maybe subconsciously harder to go, you know what, this doesn't work, let's just do this and do another one here, right? If you have a lot of detail, because then one, smoothing is going to be hard, and two, is going to be a bit harder to again get into that frame of mind that it's not set in stone, that things are going to evolve at this stage. So it's important to keep that in mind. So I reckon something like this could be an interesting character. Definitely more like an egg. And I would exaggerate the mustache as well. Again, these are just personal preferences, I guess. All right. I think I'm going to leave it here, guys. Hopefully, it's been somehow instructional today's live stream. And let me just check the chat, make sure that there are no questions unanswered, and we'll wrap it up here. John and Brecky are taking over the chat. John, that's cool. To Brecky, I bought the Close and Drum records when they first came out. Ah, great, man. Well, there you go. Yeah, the Magic Falls is an interesting brush, definitely. Cool. All right. All right. I just went through the chat really quickly, reading what you guys have been posted. Awesome. So if there is no, do you guys have any questions, any suggestions, any last minute thing that I can cover? Javi, hey, you came in a little bit late, man. Late, but hello. How you doing, Javier? By the way, your latest update of the character looks fantastic. I think it's gonna look awesome. Late to the party, no worries. As soon as I finish here, I'm gonna nip out of the house and then come back, and then I'll try to sort it out quickly so you can guys rewatch it. I'm sure because it is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure because we are doing this through a unlisted version of YouTube, you can actually just scroll back immediately. Like you can just look at it again. You don't have to wait until I post it into the right area, I think. John, how long do we have to the skull challenge? I will tell you later. I don't wanna put too much pressure. Now it's gonna be a week. It's gonna be a week. You're gonna have a week for getting the thing done, and it's also to push you to practice on a daily basis at least. So I reckon you can block things out in 1-2 days maximum, or I mean a few minutes a day, and then just refine whatever you have to do in the last 2 or 3 days. So it's only going to be a week. It's only about the sculpting, so you don't have to worry about, unless you want to do it, but it's not going to be accounted. You don't have to worry about color or texturing or lighting or rendering or anything. It's just going to be about the sculpting. Obviously, presentation counts. That's how you present it, but it's going to be just that. Cool. Yeah, you can go through the YouTube. No worries. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to put it in the student live session, but you can catch up with those later. Alrighty, guys. So hopefully you found this useful, and I will see you later. I think last time we did it at this time as well. So I just realized this morning that we did two sessions in a row at 9 my time. So the next ones would be at 3. So for those of you who are late, or maybe it's too early for you, it's gonna be a different time next time. So yeah, I'm gonna sort out a few things, and I'll see you guys later. This is our mini Silver Summit challenge. Yeah, you can think about it that way. By the way, guys, I think I mentioned this before, but I'm not gonna go to. I can't go to the Silver Summit this year, but I'm gonna be in THU, in the Trojan Horse Was a Unicorn Festival in Malta, and that's gonna happen at the end of September. So if you are around there, I'll catch up with you guys there. But I'll be absent for a few weeks. Cool, guys. All right, so I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Enjoy the rest of your week, and keep up the good work. See you later.